Today I want to talk about something I've been seeing a lot of lately, which is no new topic for some of you, but some of you might be. That is the world of card grading and all these big companies like PSA, CGC, Beckett, and now there's a fourth one that might be in the mix called Tag. The biggest thing about them is not necessarily the technology factor that they're using, high-tech, whatever they're claiming, computers or machinery, whatever it is. I'm not too sure what they use to grade these cards, but the biggest factor for a lot of people is the transparency report. Getting a report, a detailed analysis of what your card has, maybe defects or centering, that determines the factor of the grade. People are in love with that. First and foremost, the biggest thing when it comes to this transparency report that I'm noticing from Tag is there's still discrepancies. Even though they're using computer or machine or whatever this technology is to grade these cards, they're still not fully accurate, or some cards are coming out graded differently that they're exact same. In my opinion, is there's still possibly a human element when it comes to the way they grade their cards. Like, these people are probably have to calibrate these computers and machines. I don't know if it's once a day, maybe it's once an hour. I don't know what they're doing. But there's that human element. Someone might calibrate it a little bit off that day. Someone might calibrate it, way off. That might be why you're getting some differences in the grades that you're seeing some of these same cards are getting. Another element that people might not think about is, what are these computers running on? How are they being run? Are they run 24/7? Like, that might have a decline over time of the quality it's seeing in some of the grading process, right? So for example, if someone just turns on the machine, just turns on the computer, it's doing its first 10 cards that it's grading. Again, I don't know how many cards it does at a time. I don't know if it does it one at a time or how many machines they're going. But anyways, what is this machine's stress load, right? Like, is it overheating? Does it get warm? How often does it have to be recalibrated? Is it being recalibrated at the proper intervals? Is it being calibrated properly, right? There's a whole bunch of aspects to this that might make the difference between, why did this get a 10 and then the same card gets an 8, or why did this get an 8 and now it's a 10 kind of thing, right? Now, that might be a big reason why some of these other companies haven't implemented a straight technological card grading system, because these are all factors that have to be thought of in R&D. They have to be implemented and deployed properly, especially if you're a big brand legacy company like PSA or Beckett, right? They obviously use some form of technology when it comes to their grading process, but there is the human factor that they always use that has the final say in what the grade is, right? But again, they need to understand and know how to use this technology, where it's going to be when it comes to accuracy, and how to keep it consistent, because that's the biggest thing, is consistency. You don't want a card to be graded a 10 and then tomorrow be graded an 8, even though it's the exact same card, right? There's got to be testing going through it. And maybe that's what Tag didn't do. Maybe they didn't do their rigorous testing. Again, they're probably have investors and all that stuff that they just want to see, this is a great idea, let's get it going. Now they're under pressure to get this, technology out and going and start grading people's cards. And so that's a big reason probably why these other big companies haven't implemented that yet. Another factor is the cost factor, right? People forget to think about, what does this cost for that company? Again, unless the company is willing to undergo its own changes, its own self-investment reasons, and they're willing to eat their own costs because they know it's going to be beneficial in the long run, that's up to them. But if there's something that the consumers want, and then they're pushing these companies to do it, the company can do it. It's not that they can't, but then there's going to be that added cost element that's going to be added to the consumers. Now, for this extra price coming out, that could be anything from the resource it takes to research all this, to develop all of it, to roll it out, the operating costs, the upkeep, whatever it is. Like, there's so much cost added to that company, like PSA, if they were going to use a technological route to completely change their grading system. So that's an added element on the consumer. Now they have to do an analysis whether is that worth it? Is that cost increase for grading per card worth it for the consumer? I'm going to send in a card. I'm going to be paying an extra premium amount because it's going to use this technology to grade this card. Cool. But now it's going to be even more strict. Whereas if it was just a human element, they might have missed some things. So yeah, there's some things that I've seen on tag where you'll get a worse grade because it caught a defect on a card that was missed by the previous grader from a different company. So there's that element where people are like, I don't want a less grade because it's going to be more, picky. It's going to be more detailed. It's going to show everything. And, I might get a grade or two lower than I would, and I'm going to be paying more for that. Sure, but there is also that side where people want that transparency, people want that detail, they want that authenticity of everything's perfect of this card, everything's been looked at, this is what's wrong with it, and now you can get a proper grading based off of that. And there's some people that really want that. They really want to have their cards scrutinized to a T, right? They want it to be meticulous because, again, when it comes to the collecting world, the better your card is, especially if it's like put through a rigorous testing process and it comes out great, now you're winning, right? You have a very, very, very rare card there. So there's that element that some consumers might be saying, yeah, I'm willing to pay for that. I do think that these big companies, these legacy, the big three, as people call them, now it's probably going to be the big four with tag here. They're going to have to implement some sort of transparency document or report for some people. Again, I think that's going to come at a cost because you're taking a person who's grading some cards, right? I don't know how many cards a person grades in a day when it comes to these companies. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's more, hundreds, I don't know. But now you're adding an extra element where now they have to send in a report, right? They have to send in a summary. And who knows, like PSA, CGC, Beckett, they might have their own like check sheet and private documents that these employees use to go over cards. And those sheets themselves are probably private and can't be released to the public. So that's why you don't get these reports. You don't get that transparency report. So what does that mean? Well, then you're going to get that person to have to write a summary, or you have to develop a machine or a program that takes and scans all their sheets or their programs, whatever they use to document, their findings on these cards so they can get the grade. Then you have to summarize that so that the consumer can see why you gave them this grade. So that takes time. That will take that's an extra process for these people. So you're gonna have to pay them more. You're gonna be paying an extra premium for a card. So that's probably that reason why you're not getting these transparency reports. Now, what I can see CGC or PSA and all of them do is they can keep their same standard, right? They're going to keep the same people, the same employees. They're not going to change much about how they grade their cards. And they can package that as their standard tier, like they have now. And you pay X amount, let's just say that's $30 per card, right? You get this, there's no report, it's just as is. You're going to get your card when you get it. The turnaround time is this. You're paying that. Awesome. Then they can add maybe another tier beside that. That's the standard plus, right? That standard plus report, where you're going to be paying $35 or $40 a card just to have that report, because there's an extra process that goes in to get you that report, right? And then say they finally implement a technology side of it where it's completely graded by technology. It's a almost perfect system. It's flawless, right? It's as best as it can be. But now you're going to be paying that extra premium because, again, all those extra factors that go into grading these cards is going to be put on the consumer, which is fair. You're going to get an even more detailed report because it's coming straight from a machine, straight from a computer, straight from AI, whatever it is. And you're going to be able to see in much more detail every reasoning why you got this grade. And that grade is going to be more accurate and more unbiased. So you're going to be paying a premium. Let's say that's $150 per card. And that scales up based off of the rarity of your card and all those other factors, right? And then you have to wonder, is that worth it? Is that extra $150 worth? To some people, absolutely. To other people, it's gonna be like, no, I don't want to pay that much for my card to be graded, even if it's the most detailed and perfect grade. What I can see PSA doing, or why I suggest that PSA does, if they implement that technology route to make it even more tasty for consumers, to make it more incentivized for the people that want to buy that service or are hesitant to buy that service, how about you implement a new grade? As you see, there's Black Label, the Beckett Black Label, I think it is. There's the CGC Black Label, a pristine, right? Even Tag has a pristine 10, right? PSA is the only grading card company that's in the top that don't have a perfect 10 or a pristine 10 or a Black Label of any sorts. So there might be a reason for that, but this might be a way for them to implement their own Black Label. Only through technology service that we provide, when you purchase this tier, now you unlock the possibility that you might get a Black Label PSA, right? Because it can actually tell you if this card is pretty much perfect, right? I get why PSA probably doesn't tell you that they're going to have an even higher tier than 10, because there's just still those elements that humans can miss that, well, this card can't be perfect, right? I can't tell if it's perfect. No matter how much I go through it, it might take me a month to tell if this card is actually perfect, right? And they have to base it off of other cards too, and how they print out. So now you have this, that you use technology to make it as perfect as possible in the grading process. Now it can tell you if this card is perfect. And yeah, I'm sure they can put in some discrepancies, like the centering doesn't have to be exactly 50-50 kind of thing, right? But, you know, now you have that added element for the consumer. Maybe I'll get that PSA Black Label, which for the market of grading cards, holy shnikes, that will make the market go insane. It's going to expand the grading market like crazy, because you're going to get, you know, your regular grades, which, let's say a card is worth $100 at a PSA 10. That's just standard graded, no technology involved, no detail report. It's a 10. That might be $100. Well, now that same card graded a 10, but it has the report, might be worth $150, because now you have the report on why it got that 10. And then if you get that same card and it's a 10, but it's done by technology with the report, that might be $200 card, because it's really looked at. Like, it's really looked at. This card is definitely a 10, right? And then you get the Black Label 10, where that $100 card is probably worth $500 because it's perfect, you know? And then you get the rarity of that. So with all these services that you expand on, like, this could be a huge opportunity for these other companies that Tag has just opened up the door for, that can be implemented, and it will make them definitely profitable. It'll expand their own business, but it'll also expand the consumer market when it comes to the card grading. Personally, if this doesn't get implemented in the near future, like, I guarantee it's coming at some point. Yeah, I'm excited for the way Tag is, it's getting the conversation going. It's getting people interested in certain sides of the grading situation. It's actually, it's causing a fire that might boil these other big companies into a situation where they have to implement some things. Again, how does that look? We'll have to wait and see. Tell me if this is a W or an L, and like the video, follow if you want to see more content like this. And yeah, peace.